Please welcome to the stage Juan Salazar, Director, Local Policy and Community Relations for Meta.
Good afternoon, everyone. God, that's been a very insightful, it's been a very insightful day of conversations. And I think we have a great finale for you today. I'm Juan Salazar, Director of Local Policy and Community Relations at Meta. And on behalf of our entire team at Meta, it's a pleasure to welcome you to this year's Bay Area Silicon Valley Summit. Thank you to the Bay Area Council and the staff for making this happen and bringing us together in this gorgeous and beautiful venue. At Meta, we are proud to call the Bay Area home. We're proud to call California home. Every day we work to build the tools to connect and also support businesses that drive our local economy. We also invest in the technology that shape the future, from AI to virtual reality. But we also know that none of this happens in a vacuum. It takes leadership, smart policy, and a shared vision for economic growth. That's why today's conversation matters so much. It is now my great honor to introduce a visionary leader who understands exactly what is at stake. Someone who's been a bold voice for innovation, climate action, and economic opportunity for all of Californians. Governor Gavin Newsom. From his time as mayor of San Francisco to his leadership as governor, he has never shied away from complex issues, from housing and education to tech and climate resilience. Governor Newsom's leadership has been instrumental in positioning California as a global hub for technology, innovation, and sustainability. He brings both the urgency and the nuance of our moment. We're also fortunate to welcome another great leader to moderate the conversation with Governor Newsom, Warner Thomas, the CEO of Sutter Health. Warner is one of the most influential and forward-thinking leaders in all of healthcare, and we're grateful to have him guide this dialogue. But for now, please join me in welcoming the 40th Governor of the state of California, the Honorable Gavin Newsom.
Happy to have you here with us today. We heard earlier from Kellyanne Conway talking a little bit about what's happening in D.C.
Why is everyone laughing? I love Kellyanne.
We heard, she's invited to be on the podcast. So.
I, for the record, did invite her to come on the podcast. And by the way, I just interviewed a moment ago Newt Gingrich for the podcast, which is well worth listening to. I had Frank Luntz on last week. We were talking about the contract with America, and we talked about messaging, we talked about winning, and we talked about sort of pathways back, particularly for my party. So I thought these are important conversations, so I appreciate Kellyanne, and I appreciate she told you first that she's coming on the podcast.
So Governor, let's talk a little bit about what's it like being a governor in today's world of ambiguity, what's happening in D.C., trying to basically plan here in the state. So talk a little bit about what that looks like day to day.
Yeah, if I had my cell phone, I could give you a real-time prism of what things are like, because my staff just asked, has Trump called you? Because apparently this morning he put on Truth Social that he was going to call me as he was calling us out for a policy he disagrees with and threatening to withhold education money in this state. And so the state of mind is challenged in this environment with all the uncertainty, all the headwinds, particularly from Washington, D.C. And I say that as someone that wears the hat as governor, but also as someone with a number of small businesses that are wondering what their futures look like and the futures of our employees that are looking at the issues of trade and looking at exports up into Canada and looking at allies and trading partners that are a big part of our growth. Conversations that I'm having, in fact, just with someone who called me yesterday in a panic because they can't afford what they suggest amounted to a 55% tariff. I was surprised 55 in China with scooters, electric scooters, and they're about to go out of business. It's a business, it's a family business, and they had tremendous pride. It's just another example of the collateral damage of uncertainty at this time. So I think, and to answer your question, I feel there's an anxiety that we can't control everything. But it's also a recognition that it's not what happens to us, it's how we respond to what happens to us. It's most important. So I'm really proud to represent a state that has a state of mind around resiliency and renewal and stands its ground. We've filed 22 lawsuits now against the Trump administration, but also tries to find common ground. Open hand, not a closed fist. And I made that very clear when I went out in the tarmac to meet with President Trump, followed up with a conversation with him that night, the next morning, and conversations in between. And so that's our mindset. And for that, I guess long-windedly, I'd say it's a real privilege to represent the fourth largest economy in the world, to represent the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy, to represent a state where 27% of us are foreign-born, living together and advancing together across so many conceivable differences. It's a magical place, and I'm very proud of California, and I'm very honored to represent it.
Well, that's it's been a tough several months. Obviously, with you released the budget. There's some challenges there with what's happening, kind of through the policies in D.C. Talk a little bit about what you think that path looks like forward. How do we navigate some of the budget gaps? This is not something that hasn't happened before. We can learn from the past. So how do you see, your role in that? How can the business community be helpful? What's that path look like?
Well, let me thank the business community. I mean, we have more Fortune 500 companies that we've had since 2010 in California. That's something you don't read about much. First time since 2010, more Fortune 500 headquartered companies. You think every damn headquarters left California. Not only do we have more scientists, engineers, more researchers, more, venture capital than any other state in the world, we have over half the unicorns in the United States. California continues to dominate in every major industry. There's not a comparable industry, large-scale industry in the United States of America that California doesn't have a larger counterpart. I'll give you a proof point. We're the largest manufacturing state in America by 41% margin to the next largest state, Texas. You look at hunting jobs, you wouldn't naturally think that. Forestry jobs, agricultural jobs, 150% larger than the next largest state. In every category, California's counterparts are substantially larger than any other state. That's what separates the game played here from the game played everywhere else, is the scale and scope and the diversity of our economy. That's why we're the fourth largest economy in the world, $4.1 trillion a year output. It wasn't just that many years ago, we were at $3 trillion. Sort of belies all the critics. 18% of the world's R&D, the state of California. I'll say that again. 18% of the world's R&D. China, Germany, 22, 21%. California as a state, 18%. I know you're talking to Janet and others about that conveyor belt for talent, which is our institutions of higher learning, which are best in class. And all of the vandalism that's been done on truth and trust as it relates to investments that the federal government has historically made, this formula for success that defines California's success, America's success, as it relates to NIH and NSF and partnerships with Sandia Lab and Lawrence Livermore Labs, and the extraordinary talent that we're able to attract from around the globe. I was talking to Gingrich about that on the podcast today, because he just came out with an interesting documentary, which I think is interesting because it's A, on PBS, and B, and B, it's about immigration. It was a love letter to immigration, Newt Gingrich. Then again, it wasn't surprising to me. He's very connected to the Reagan legacy. You look at Reagan's last speech in the Oval, where he talked about the life force of new Americans, Lady Liberty's torch. He talked about the history of the anti-immigration movement emanating out of here, the Bay Area, the Chinese Exclusion Act, this guy Dennis Kearney, the original Donald Trump in the late 1880s. And that history connecting to our success, our present, not just our proud past, and the imperative of making those investments, not lost on me, was the assault on Harvard and their foreign students. And so that contradiction continues to challenge us. But I just want to thank all of you for making this state what it is. And I say that because we need to be reminded of that. There's a Trump derangement syndrome. I agree with that. And there's a California derangement syndrome. And it's almost surround sound on these propaganda networks, 24/7, trying to push down and bury the reputation of this state. Yet we continue to outperform, and we continue to prove these declinists wrong. And that's because of you, your resiliency, your faith and commitment to this state, and your willingness to take risks and to put everything on the line. And so that entrepreneurial spirit, innovation, yes, capitalism, enlightened capitalism, is what makes California so special and so great. But at its core are its values. When I talk about 27% of foreign born, it's a point of pride for me. It's pluralism. We practice pluralism. We're not just pluralistic, but we practice pluralism. And that's a word we don't hear a lot about, and it's a word that I think we need to talk more about. That dynamism defines California's success. The fact that you feel included, and you come here for riches and new beginnings because you feel like you belong. And that value proposition is, I think, the most important and precious business investment strategy we have, and we have to maintain that.
Right. So we had our mayors here earlier, our three mayors, Oakland, San Jose, and San Francisco, talking a little bit about the population. And I know there's been reports about the outmigration of folks leaving California. There was, they were talking about they're seeing people coming back to California. Maybe you can talk about what you see on behalf of the state, because I know there's been a lot of national reports about people leaving California to other areas versus coming into the state. Where does that stand today?
Well, they're just making it up. California saw a big population boom and increase this last year, saw a big one the prior year. Year prior to that, we lost, 114 people. By the way, look it up. Don't think I'm making this up. So we have back-to-back years of population growth. 3 years ago, a modest, basically, one of 11 states to see a modest decline. And yeah, we had one tough year in the peak of COVID. And what you heard anecdotally from those mayors is what we're experiencing numerically, is that it turns out, with love and respect, July and August in Austin ain't all that. People are sort of, coming back home and a little bit to their senses as well. I think. The folks that are loudest bashing this state are the ones that have enjoyed more of the abundance of this state. Forgive me, but Elon Musk is, poster child for this. It's not despite our regulations that he's a multi-billionaire. It's because of them. Literally, we created the market. It was the certainty, unlike the uncertainty of the Trump tariff regime. The market's certainty, because of the California Air Resources Board and Ronald Reagan himself, who established it in 1967, that gave us authority under the Clean Air Act, given us a waiver by a guy named Richard Nixon, that allowed us to set these regulations, then create the conditions where people had confidence to take risks and make investments. And yes, we subsidize those investments with billions and billions of dollars, your dollars in tax credits, to build some of the world's great companies like Tesla, which is one of the world's great companies. It's a point of pride that it's a California-based company. Sure, you say Austin, but it's a California company, made in California. And I'm proud that Elon Musk embraced those regulations. And I'm proud that he made these investments. And I'm proud of his genius. Disagree with a lot, obviously, but that's a point of pride, and it's a point that, again, I think we need to emphasize. And so, look, if you're looking to do business in the cheapest place, if that's all you're looking for, that's never been California. That wasn't California 25 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You want it to be the best place to do business. Why are there more entrepreneurs, more engineers, more scientists, like I said, more Nobel laureates? Look, I think the UC has 12,600 active patents. It's the largest system in the world with more active patents. There's, again, a formula that California has advanced. Now, that world that we invented is competing against us, and I'm mindful of that, and we need to step up our game. But if your whole focus is on capital gains, then you'll make your money here, and you'll try to cash out there, and then you'll figure your way back. And that's been a pattern And so that's why startups are so important. That's why creating the conditions, that entrepreneurial framework, I call it climate control versus command and control. Create the conditions where success feels irresistible because people feel they can take those risks. And create those rules for risk-taking without recklessness, which is, again, that balance that we're constantly working on. Was the balance that was just advanced. I didn't hear the abundance conversation, but I'm intimately familiar with Alex and his work and obviously with Ezra, and they're on to not just something, but perhaps the most important something for California to start getting right and rebalance things as it relates to CEQA and regulations and trying to find some balance, which I think is key to our success and ultimately key to unlocking the question you asked prior, which is the vagaries and the challenges associated with our budgets.
And I think going to that, just let's go on down that road a little bit on CEQA and regulation. And obviously you got a lot of companies here, they want to grow, they want to invest capital in California. I mean, the regulation, the delay, how do you see that evolving? What could be done different from a state perspective that would help facilitate that growth and expansion?
It exists everywhere. And you say, well, hold on, I just listened to a panel that said, no, it exists uniquely in blue states. I challenge that notion. Let me separate housing for a second, because I think that's fair game. But I think it's an interesting fact, high-speed rail tends to be the poster child for California crack-up. I mean, big part of the book. And it's not an indictment. I think it's of the book and its analysis. I thought it was spot on. I mean, I'm the third governor in this baton that's been passed on the high-speed rail. What's an interesting fact, though, now, is we're starting to lay track. It's an interesting fact that we're done. 98% of all the environmental work is done. It's cleared. It's an interesting fact that 1,100 pieces of utility equipment have been relocated, 2,270 PolitiFact me, 2,270 parcels have been brought in to the state's possession. And we're moving forward. Compare that to the high-speed rail project in Texas. You probably didn't know about that. Well, there's nothing going on there. They announced 1 year after we announced. It was a high-speed rail system between Houston and Dallas. And they have not laid an inch of track. How the hell do you not know about that? I thought it's Texas. Big, abundant red state where everything is possible. You know why they couldn't do it? It's 4x the budget. Trump pulled a modest grant just a few weeks ago. Again, back to California derangement syndrome. You didn't read about this. And they abandoned the project. It's basically abandoned. In Texas, I thought that was the way. Show me the way. It's not the way. We spent, I admit, look, no one's denying, I can't make up for the past. We spent $3.1 billion on property acquisition and permitting. $3.1 billion of your dollars. And it took forever. It's all the stuff I imagine you just heard around litigation, democracy by, litigation, liberalism by litigation, courts, process. And we have got to reconcile it. But don't think for a second it's unique to California. It's not. Now, on the housing side, we're as dumb as we want to be. And this is the original sin in California. It impacts more things in more ways on more days. We can start talking about all the sources of all our stress and frustration, affordability, going to the population issues around homelessness and the challenges on our streets and sidewalks, and we've got to get out of our way. But at the end of the day, localism is determinative, and that's why I'm glad you had those 3 mayors. It's time for all of us to be held to a higher level of accountability. We've got to move away from this NIMBYistic framework. It's a supply-demand problem. It's not even complicated. It's Econ 101. And so local governments need to get out of their way and they need to take responsibility. Yes, I'm talking about you, Huntington Beach. Yes, I'm talking about 46 other cities that refuse to even get into compliance with their housing element. But I'm also proud about our state that created a housing accountability unit that started suing cities for not meeting their housing element goals. We have the most aggressive RHNA goals that we've had, almost 2x the last cycle, 2.5 million legally binding housing units. We've had 800 actions with the housing accountability unit, including my friends here in San Francisco, that we got them back into compliance using a stick, not just carrots. And we provided unprecedented supports in terms of incentives in tax credits. It's time now to move. And it's also time to build on the 42 CEQA reform bills that I've had the privilege of signing, to move on the 270-day judicial streamlining bill that I signed 2 years ago. You saw Sites Dam was the first to take advantage of it. One of the largest green investments in California history, world history, will be the second project to take advantage of it. And it's time to now move forward these two bills that half of you in this room have worked on. Jim has been the inspiration and author of, and that's Buffy Wicks and Scott Wiener's bill. And I put them in the budget this year because I'm not interested in failing on that to make sure we move those forward.
So tell us a little bit about those, Governor. What do you think that actually changes for the state? What will happen with those
Well,
bills?
just its mindset, its intentionality. I'm talking about its SB, 607 and AB 609, and forgive me, 2,000 bills introduced this year. Now those are, thank you, God bless. And it's just about creating certainty. That's it. It's just time to capital, time to delivery. It's not even complicated. It's a bunch of land use stuff, all this stuff you already know. It's just, and it's building on a lot of audacious reforms we've had in the last few years from SB 9 and work we've done on ADUs. I mean, look, we've begun to finally focus on housing. It was not the focus when I got there, I assure you. Heck, we didn't have a homeless plan when I got there. The state of California's never had a homeless plan. Homelessness was not the responsibility of the state. I think when I got there, everyone said, well, Newsom created this problem. In 2005, we had the highest point in time count, 188,000 folks, under the Schwarzenegger administration than we even do today. I was mayor of San Francisco. It's the reason I'm mentioning this is not to point a finger. It's to make a point that I never considered Arnold Schwarzenegger in relationship to that. I just said, wait, I'm mayor. It's my responsibility. Never considered the state's role in this. And it was obvious that the cities and counties were overwhelmed, no longer a coastal issue. Trust me, the fastest growing parts of the state are in rural parts of this state. With all their land use change, again, with all their rules and governance, it's just, that's not the secret sauce either in some of these places. More permissive attitudes or more criminalizing attitudes hasn't necessarily solved for a lot of these things. So the states needed to step up, and we've done so in unprecedented ways across the spectrum of issues, including one where Sutter, and this gentleman, has been one of the biggest boosters and most important leaders, providing formal and moral authority on the most significant mental health reforms in California history. And can I just for a moment make this point because I think it's important. In 1959, your state had 37,000 locked hospital beds for a population half the size that it is today. Last year, we had 5,500. Populations doubled. We went from 37,000 at peak to 5,500. Now, that was a bipartisan movement around deinstitutionalization, involuntary confinement, not just more conservative, save a buck. What was never realized was the community-based alternative. After the Lanterman-Petter Sword Act in 1967, Reagan identified with a lot of that, and of course, President Reagan with even more of that. But today, we're not interested in who's to blame. We're focused on what to do. And we were able to put out in front of you Proposition 1, $6.38 billion. We worked the RAND Corporation to determine exactly what our needs were, region by region in the state, what type of portfolio of support. And we put land use and zoning reforms into the initiative, attached with money. And it's just been 14 or 15 months. It's the fastest distribution of funds in California history. We just sent out the equivalent of 5,000 units of behavioral health housing to the counties, $3.3 billion in the first round. And all of them have one thing in common. They're not just shovel ready, but within 90 days, they have to lock in the contract, and we have to meet performance goals in order to deliver the project type. And next July, you'll reform the entire mental health service system under the Mental Health Services Act. And we'll focus on providing $1 billion a year for housing that is a baseline guarantee so cities and counties can start planning over multi-years to address the complexity of needs moving forward. You combine that with all these other homeless reforms, SB 43 and conservatorship reforms, care court and new strategies for supportive care, not just substituted care, and the money in home key and room key. This is next level support for local government. And that then opens this question. Will local government perform? And I put a new website. If you're bored, maybe you can look at the website. It's called accountability.ca.gov. And I'd encourage one of you to do it. And you'll see what that website is. It is a benchmarking of every county in California, where they are in their housing element, where they are on their RENA goals, where they are on care court, where they are on homelessness, unsheltered and sheltered, and whether or not they're performing. And I have zero interest. I have 18 months, whatever left. I am not going to fund failure anymore. Over my dead body, am I going to sign a budget? You're on your behalf any longer. More is not better, better is better. We need to see results, and we need accountability at every level of government.
And Governor, I think on behalf of the healthcare organizations in the state, we appreciate the support here. And I think we stand by you. We want to help in this initiative. I guess how do you see, if we're successful over the next 1, 3, 5 years with these initiatives in mental health and homelessness, what do you see happening? What do you think success looks like?
Well, I mean, we want less people on the streets and sidewalks. Number one priority for me, this is me, again, good people can disagree, is encampments. Enough. No more tents, no more encampments on the streets and sidewalks. And it's not whack-a-mole, it's not out of sight, out of mind. 3 years ago, I said that to mayors. Mayor said, we don't have any money for encampments. I said, fine, we'll do a $50 million pilot project. And if you could come up with encampment resolution plans to resolve the issues, the underlying issues, then we'll fund them. It was wildly oversubscribed. The next year, the legislature we approved together $750 million, specifically targeted encampments. Enough. Do your job. They said, well, we can't do our job. We've got this thing called grants pass. We have a Supreme Court. So I said, well, no problem. We'll file an amicus brief on your behalf. Oh, well, that's so controversial. State of California did that. I joined all these Republicans. And we were successful at the Supreme Court. That allows people to move these encampments along. There's no compassion. People are dying on our watch. They're dying on our watch. I met with a young man, God is my witness. I was with the mayor of San Diego, Todd Gloria, right there off a freeway underpass. We walked into an encampment in a tent. Young man came over to us, couldn't have been more gracious and generous, a meth addict. He self-declared as a meth addict. He said, I'm desperate. He said, but not for myself, for my brand new baby. In the tent, brand new baby, a couple days old, born in the tent. And he said, thank you for coming by. Thank you for displacing us. Thank you for disrupting our lives. I don't think about that lightly. I mean, how many people have to die on our watch in the name of compassion? That's BS. There's no compassion in allowing these encampments on our streets and sidewalks. It is time for them to step up. So that is number one priority, and it should be for these cities and counties. And number two, more broadly, in the interest of time, I want to continue to see progress. And you say, what progress, Governor? Well, numerical progress. We put out a two-hour budget presentation, which can answer that prior question about the budget. And in that, we showed a chart between 2014 and 2019. I remember it because I just got there. We saw a 50% increase in unsheltered homeless. Last year, 0.45%. We outperformed 44 other states. No other state did better on veterans homelessness, the fastest decline in the United States of America. If you compare and contrast, I'll just put it in perspective, homeless increased 9% in Florida, went up 18.1% nationwide. This is by no means a phenomenon any longer to California. But we're finally moving in the right direction. And I want to continue to see that accelerate. And I want to see exponentials as it relates to this flywheel. We provided the reforms, we provided the support, now we need to be held to account. And so I'm really hopeful that in the next few years, we're going to see a marked difference on our streets and sidewalks, and we're going to see the benefits of these unprecedented reforms, including those on the youth-backed.
So let's change gears a little bit. That's great conversation. I think we all appreciate the facts and the fact that you're looking for results. We want to see a difference, and I think we all need to work together on this. Technology. Obviously, Silicon Valley has been the home of the technology boom over the past several decades. Now, once again, San Francisco, really the home of the AI revolution. San Jose, depending upon who you ask, could be the home of the revolution. I'm glad that we're just all here together to battle that out. What do you think California's role is in supporting that evolution, and really what's going to be a world-changing technology in AI over the next several years?
Well, we're blessed. I mean, we've got the stale old stat of 32 of the top 50 market cap AI companies in the state of California. I'm looking for an updated version of that study. I imagine in some ways it's even more impressive today than it was even 6 months or so ago. I think we have to be careful about overregulation. I vetoed a bill last year that got a lot of attention, that had a lot of support. I bet 8 out of 10 of you would have raised your hand and told me to sign it last year. That was AB 1047, or SB 1047. I thought it overcorrected, and we have to be very careful in that respect. Now I'm concerned we're significantly overcorrecting in the other direction federally with this new bill that just passed that preempts states like California for having even just basic baseline regulations to protect deep fakes or revenge porn or other basic things that California, any state, should have the responsibility and role to regulate. And so that's the challenge. That's sort of the tension right now, particularly with the Trump administration. I should note, we were hand in glove with the Biden administration. I came out with the first executive order on AI in the country. And we did that 2 weeks before the Biden administration did. And we worked in concert with them. In fact, I was here at the Fairmont Hotel with Biden. I think Clinton Janet actually had an event here later for President Biden after that event where he announced his executive order in this space. And I thought it struck the right balance, addressing the perils, truth and trust, and safety. Now they've thrown that out. And so I'm concerned about that. No one's calling for an EU-style regulation. Some are. Some of you might be. But we're certainly not. So that's the tension and how we find that balance. I have a remarkable work group, Fei Li and others, the godmother of AI. She's been principal advisor for the administration. We continue to build on the executive order. I signed dozens of AI-related bills last year that I felt struck the right balance. We're trying to make sure our Privacy Commission doesn't absorb AI. That was never its mandate or mission. Thank you, the two people that know what I'm talking about. And so we're just constantly sort of iterating in this space, but it's a deep point of pride that these companies are out here. And so we want to promote that progress. And my gosh, what a love letter that we got last week from John A. Ivey and Sam when they announced their merger of their two companies. And it was a love letter to you. It was a love letter to the Bay Area, to San Francisco, and what separates, again, our game from the game played everywhere else. And it's just a reminder, we're nothing but a mirror of our consistent thoughts. Whatever you focus on, you're going to find more of. And I hope in the spirit of abundance in Derek's work that we can start focusing on what's right a little bit more than what's wrong. I think it's happening in San Francisco. I like some great trend lines last year that are now headlines this year. And I think Daniel's doing an amazing job. I'm biased, of course. And I really feel like we are in a remarkable moment. And I mean this. Now this sounds some Pollyannish politician. Y'all don't trust people that say this. But I swear, and we were talking about it a moment ago, Jim, never felt more optimistic about where we are and where we can be. On the housing issues, finally, moving in the right direction, trying to find the right balance in terms of addressing some of these vexing issues in our state. And so I'm just very hopeful that whatever the next legislature looks like, whatever next, mayor, wish Barbara all the best. We want to support her, get to deal with the crime issues there, quality of life issues. Those become foundational as well in supporting our AI and innovative ecosystem as well. Quality of life matters. And that's got to also be part of an economic agenda.
So transitioning to the federal agenda, obviously there was kind of a sea change in November, last November. I think there's, kind of a indication across the country that, folks wanted to go maybe in a little bit different direction or had a view of kind of where things are.
Who's the politician? Jeez.
Yeah. So where, how do you view that? Where's the Democratic Party today? How does the Democratic Party, evolve over the next couple of years? To win back the House, to win back the White House. What does the party have to do to change, kind of the outlook?
It was a 180-degree pivot. And look, I'm subjective, and forgive me, I lose a bunch of you, but it's America in reverse. These folks want to bring us back to pre-1960s world on a myriad of issues, on LGBTQ rights, on voting rights, civil rights. But this is what I was challenging Newt a little bit, Speaker, today, but also on that formula I keep talking about. I'm very concerned. These tariffs, they're devastating. I did ads on Fox. Some of you that watch Fox know what I'm talking about. I'll know who's watching Fox. About the impacts of these tariffs that have already impacted the state of California. And let me go back to the question about the state budget. We showed the charts. We were over $6.5 billion ahead of projections through April in top-line revenue. We were going like this. Submitted a balanced budget in January, $6.5 billion ahead in revenue. And on Liberation Day, we saw a precipitous decline. You see in the multi-year budget year one, this budget year one, about a $16 billion impact to the impacts of the tariffs and tourism in the state of California. Last year, record-breaking tourism spend. Visit California just announced that, $157 billion. They also just announced in March an 11%, just like that, 11% decline in tourism, just like that. The impacts of the reckless policies coming from Washington, D.C. cannot be overstated. And so it's incredibly important. That's why we're the first state to sue on the tariff policy. We have real confidence. In fact, I'm particularly more confident now they're trying to change jurisdictions. Under the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, nothing enumerates a president able to impose unilateral tariffs, period, full stop. It's not even complicated. And the Trump administration, I think, knows this. We're going to win that lawsuit, but it can't happen too soon. And so I think about the Democratic Party in relationship to the moment. And what part of me thinks the obstacle is the way. What stands in the way becomes the way. A little Marcus Aurelius. And in so many ways, the path back is through Trump and Trumpism in reaction to this moment. But I think that would be a big mistake, I humbly submit, for the Democratic Party, because I don't think we learned our lessons from Biden's first win. We learned the wrong lessons, I humbly submit, from the midterms. And I don't think we've had the humility to understand how badly we did in this last election. You look at the high water mark for the party. Please, CNN, do another poll. NBC, please do another poll too. We're 27%. I got in trouble saying that's kind of toxic level. See Stephen here, others are brand builders. If you're 27%, you're struggling. That's a toxic brand. And you look at every measure that matters. Does this party have your back, your best interest at heart? Are they strong or weak? We're on the wrong side of every one of those questions. So we've got to, I think, have a forensics and figure out why. And it's hard. And I've been trying to do that a little bit. Look back, forgive me, I'm not here to promote the platform of my podcast, but it was interesting. The first response I got to the podcast was from Charlie Kirk, said, I'll go on and I'll visit with you. And I said, well, that's amazing, Charlie, because I want to pick your brain. Success leaves clues. You kicked our ass. You rolled us. I said, my niece was just down at USC, and she was wondering what was going on outside her dorm room because there were mobs of people, and it was around surrounding you, not to protest, but to listen to you. What the hell are you doing? How long have you been doing this? Success leaves clues. You may not like what Charlie Kirk represents or what he's doing, but we don't have any example on the other side. That, I had Steve Bannon on. Forgive me. But I talk about cancel culture. A lot of my Democratic friends, that was it. That was what the hell's going on? I'm done with this guy. I listened to Bannon. Listen to the podcast. It sounded like Bernie Sanders, half of it, maybe 3/4 of it. Not kidding. He was talking about taxing a lot of you. He was talking about cutting taxes further for a lot of folks in the back room here. He was talking in populist terms. That was interesting to me because I had fallen prey to a lot of that cancel as well, where I just can't stand him on January 6th, so why the hell am I even listening to him on other things? Even had one of the, guys who he and Limbaugh created the whole space, Michael Savage on, who started with language, culture, and borders before Trump was, a Republican. And I just think with some humility and grace, you got to learn from the other side. I mean, I remember Sam Walton had something called Eyes of the Enemy. He was casing other people's joints. People wanted to meet with Sam. They said, he's not available. He's casing Target. He's trying to figure out Bed Bath & Beyond at their peak we're doing. I think Democrats need to have that mindset. We need to get out of our own damn bubble and with respect, get out of our own way. Have some humility and grace in what went right and what went wrong. I think we were tonally deaf on immigration. And by the way, you have 394 National Guard at the border. You've had them for 5 years. And the reason we have them down there is for a reason. We needed them down there. If nothing else, just to deal with the fentanyl issues, which are real. And we're very real and very present in Southern California. My point is, little humility, little grace, a deeper reflection on where we are and where we're going, and address the issues that are trend lines that now everyone has seen exposed, and that is we are getting crushed with young men. And it is an issue for me that is terrifying in terms of the trajectory. And forgive me on closing on that because I saw this time up. I just went right to the young men. We are getting crushed, shellacked. And the other side is weaponizing that. The Andrew Tates of the world. I won't go down that list. You know them well. And any of you got a young boy, and you see the algorithms, which are very gendered, and you see how effective these guys have been. Charlie's the leader in this space. My 13-year-old said, I want to meet Charlie Kirk. I said, how the hell you know him? He said, Dad, when are you going to have Joel Peterson on? I said, how do you know who he is? And he's not even political. He's watching video games and it appears on his YouTube. It's real. And so Democrats, again, I just think we need to really have a deep introspection. And we need to own up to what has happened over the last few elections, not just this election. And we have got to become, I think we've got to square with our agenda and where the American people are. As folks will say in this room, you got to know your customers. You got to meet people where they are. Doesn't mean you have to sell your soul. Doesn't mean you can't stand up on principle. But right now, we are not reflecting on so many issues that American people overwhelmingly value. They do not identify the Democratic brand as the brand that can solve those problems. So that's my long-winded, subjective point of view.
I think helpful.
And one thing I'm never going to do is give up on my damn party. I think the best is yet to come, and I think this is an amazing comeback story, and we're going to start that in the midterms. Eat your heart out, Newt Gingrich. He says there's no way we're going to win the midterms, and I'm looking forward to being there with Speaker Jeffries, and that will be the beginning of this comeback for America. So looking forward
there we go.
to 2026 and 28.
So, Governor, I know we're running out of time, but just one piece of advice for, you have a lot of business leaders in here, CEOs, business leaders. What advice do you have for us on how we can build stronger coalitions with our government leaders, how we can work together to change the state, to evolve the state together?
Well, I ask you selfishly, what you say matters, where you say matters, when you say it matters. Every single thing you may say that's not perfect about our state is weaponized against our state. And I say that again, that's a personal statement. And it would be incredibly valuable if there are certain things going right and you're doing okay, and you're feeling pretty good, about the 3-day weekend you just had up in Bolinas, and, you're driving back down through the Bay Area and going, looking a lot better, San Francisco. Maybe you say that. Maybe you can share that, because I think it really matters. And in return, some of you may have gotten cell phones from me. We also need to step up our game. I sent about 600 cell phones to CEOs in the state with one program number, mine, and with a handwritten note. And I can't tell you how glorious it has been to get calls from security personnel thinking these were threats and bombs. But periodically, an actual CEO that uses the number, it says, this is amazing. Can I actually talk to you? Or is this some BS PR thing? And I'm like, text me, call me anytime. And I mean it. And we've had 5 or 6 relationships that have been formed in the last few months that I wish 5 or 6 years ago I had done, that worked through all the BS, clarified concerns and issues. And so I think we have responded. For things to change, we all have to change. That includes the elected officials. It sure hell includes me. But I just ask you just to say some, if you're feeling good, express that. If you're feeling doubt, reach out. But I just want to end, as I began, with just deep gratitude for all of you. The fact that you're here means you haven't given in to the fear, anxiety, and cynicism. The fact you're here means you still give a damn. The fact you're here is you haven't given up on our state. And so I mean this. I'm the future ex-governor. I've got a sell-by date. And I can't impress upon you more how much you matter and how much my team cares. And I think a growing number of folks up in Sacramento care as well. So thank you all very much for this privilege.
Governor Gavin Newsom, thank you.